ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Marvin Sprouse.
And I'm Dr. Charline Sprouse.
Boy, are we glad to be here today. We're going to talk about a book we wrote a long time ago. It's called Connecting, a Guide to Great Relationships. Yes, we can do that. We can talk in sync. Charline and I are celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary tonight.
It's really 25.
We've been married 25 years, and we're going to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary because we have great expectations and confidence. And let's see, on our 50th we'll be
120 or something like that.
105, yeah. So let's get moving. We're going to talk about the second two chapters in our book. And the second chapter is all about families. And you know, one of my favorite quotations about family comes from the old Chinese pastor Confucius. And Confucius says, as the family goes, so goes the country.
That's true. I just wanted to read a quick poem that I found yesterday. It has so much to do with everything. It's called Treasured Seasons, God's Treasured Seasons. For everything there is an appointed season and a time for everything under heaven. A time for sharing, caring, loving, and giving. A time for remembering, a time for parting. And you, dear Lord, have made everything beautiful in its time. For everything you, Father, do remains forever. I just love that.
I do too. And it's talking about seasons, and everybody has a season and a time. Does it say anything in that poem about the Texans going to the Super Bowl this year?
No. Okay, we're going to talk about chapter 2 now of our book. It's all about families. And a family is our first connection. A baby is born into some kind of a family. The next thing is however that family looks. And families today have many different makeups. Then we're going to talk about parenting. As a parent, we have no reference except for where we came from. And where we came from was our family, whatever that was for you. The next one is making sense of nonsense. And that's about if you come from a family with addiction, no matter what kind of nonsense is going on in your mind as a child, you're going to try to make some sense out of it so that it doesn't seem so confusing to you. And addictive families who have any amount of addicts from 1 to 3 or 4, it's very confusing. Nothing is ever the same except the addiction.
We try to look into the lives of families through the big lens. We back off and we ask people questions. And I remember we had a family we were working with. I'm not going to say where they were, but I'll say New Mexico. And when they were out in New Mexico, and we asked them, what do you do on a typical night? And let me tell you something. This family, Charline and I, have both agreed this was the most dysfunctional family we'd ever met or worked with. And we asked them, what do you do on a typical night? They said, we rent videos. I said, when's the last time you did that? They said, last night. I said, what video did you watch? And they watched Silence of the Lambs. Isn't that the perfect video for a highly dysfunctional family? And you know, the little teenage boy in that family, I said, who's your hero? He said, it'd be a toss-up between Billy the Kid and Hannibal Lecter. And I said, oh boy, have we got troubles right here in River City.
We have a lot of work to do.
People live in a family, and that family is their reference for the world. The child living in the most dysfunctional family in the world doesn't say, oh, so this is what a dysfunctional family looks like. No, no, no. He says, so this is what family looks like. This is family. It's the only reference he has.
All right, the next one is internal injuries. These are injuries to your spirit or your soul. I a lot of times talk about people being crystallized or shattered at a certain age, and I can tell that by their emotional responses to things. And these injuries are not seen. They come out through the behavior, and that's how a therapist or a life coach can tell. what has happened.
And we worked with a girl one time, also in New Mexico, lovely, lovely lady. And she said that one of the most traumatic things that ever happened to her was when her dad walked out of the house, throwing things around, and as he walked out the door, he said, "And I'm leaving because of that brat."
It's all her
And he
fault.
looked at her. And do you think she had healthy adult relationships? No, because she was carrying a message. I shatter relationships. I destroy families. I'm a home wrecker. Her dad put that curse on her. Ladies and gentlemen, mothers and fathers, please be careful what you say to your children. Some of it is sort of like it's got Gorilla Glue on it. It sticks to the wall and it never comes down. It sticks to the recesses of the mind. And children carry those curses through life into adulthood.
As life coaches, we can help with that and have help with that. Now we're going to talk about how to have a great family. This is the fun part. Maintain a spiritual power base, whatever that is to you. I want to call God God because I want Him to know me when I get to heaven. People have different names for God. Whatever it is to you, as long as it's a spiritual power base. The second thing you do is establish boundaries, and we will talk a lot about that because it's extremely difficult if you've had no boundaries. Unconditional love is the next thing, and that is loving the person no matter what the behavior is.
There are always boundaries. Charline and I are still in love after 25 years, and that's great. It's wonderful. But you know something? I don't want her to borrow my toothbrush because there are boundaries. There are places not even Charline is supposed to go as far as I'm concerned. And I establish those boundaries, and if I come in one morning and I find Charline using my toothbrush, I'm going to remind her of my boundary.
And I wouldn't use this too.
No.
Okay. Communication is the next thing. To be lovingly honest. And that's difficult if you've been taught that you can tell a little white lie here and a little white lie here, and it's not okay. Give people space. With children, you give them more space as they grow until they get to be a teenager. Then you pull the space back a little bit so that they won't get into lying to you and going the wrong places and things like that. Sense of being a team. Each person needs to be dependable. Other people in the team depend on you as a team member, and you need to be able to depend on the other people in your family as your team member. And that has to be taught sometimes. Our second parents. Sometimes if you don't have a very functional family, you can go and get second parents through your coaches, teachers, Sunday school leaders, pastors, neighbors even sometimes. All right, the eighth one is a connection forever. This begins at birth and it goes on. And people who are born into a very dysfunctional family do not have that connection, and they must go out to their second parents and get that.
Can I say something about second parents?
Quickly.
One of my great heroes in life is Coach Tony Dungy. And when Michael Vick went to prison, when he came out of prison, part of his parole instructions were that he was assigned to a mentorship with Tony Dungy. And I'm saying, man, I'd go to prison for that. That's so great. Here's a wonderful, great, strong, character-driven Christian gentleman, and he's going to give Michael Vick instructions. And you know, about 3 months later, the coaches were saying, Michael's different. He comes early to practice. He stays late. He works harder. A lot of times we miss the wonderful experience of having a principle-driven father, and we find another one somewhere else. We find what we need to get through. And sometimes it's a coach or a teacher or a pastor, whoever it is. You know, I went into Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 40 years old. And I remember the first meeting I went to, I drove around the block 6 times before I stopped and went in. And I attended about a half dozen meetings before I had the courage to say, I'm Marvin and I'm an alcoholic. I couldn't say that. My mouth would just get all gummy full of, I couldn't move my lips to say those words. But after I did, things started to happen. And let me tell you about the relationship I developed with my first sponsor. I could call him day or night and tell him, man, I think I need a drink. And he said, no, you don't need a drink, you need to talk to me. So it's wonderful to have second parents along the line.
Absolutely. All of these ways to make you have a great family are to get you ready to belong to the family of man. We're not going to have time for chapter 3 today, so we've outlined chapter 2 of our book called Connecting, A Guide to Great Relationships. We want you to come back to see us on Living Better ITV. Just click on Life Coaches or Drs. Marvin and Charline Sprouse. Thank you.
And by the way, we are life coaches, and our first session is always free. The number you see on the screen right now, call it. And we'll just sit down and have a life coaching session with you and won't charge you a penny. And it might change your life. Wouldn't that be something? Thank you so much for watching and listening.